we briefly covered, right? There are two building blocks or two major components which makes the application. One is the model, other is the harness layer. And we briefly also talked about what does the model do, right? So one thing we focused on, or I think I want to stress about, is again, model is not actually doing things or searching the web or editing your file or anything of that sort. It just produces a text, takes text as input and produces text output, which then is used by the harness to perform that operation, right? And then it takes the response of that operation and feeds it back to the model, and then model again reasons over it to suggest what should happen next, right? And this keeps happening in a loop, which is also termed as agentic loop. And finally, either when the task is completed or it needs some user input, is prompted to answer something. So again, we talked about the first limitation with the model, right? That it's a text in text output system. There is nothing else that it's doing. Everything else is being done by the harness. So just to iterate over what are the capabilities of the model, again, it can reason, plan over text, read and write uh, code as text, follow instructions, and behave as a persona, right? Again, few things that it can't do. It can't read or edit a file, right? It can't run a command, it can't search the web. I think we have gone over all of it in quite depth. So I'll skip on to talk about the second limitation of the model. So second limitation of the model is stateless, right? So every time there is a call to the model, right, that's one request, and the model will not remember anything when the second time it is called, right? I think those who are software developers, I'm sure you have heard of REST API, right? So it's the very same thing. REST APIs are stateless, right? You make one request to a server, in the next request it does not remember, right, what all request it has served. And again, the solution to this problem, again, we all see, right, whenever you use an app, the you don't get the feeling that you're using the app new, right? Quest, for example, you have added a cart, it persists in your cart, it remains in your cart. So again, all of this is handled by the server side when we talk about development in general, right? And it happens via token. So when you log into an application, right, you get a token and you send back that token in every request. And basically, whichever app using, right, let's say if you're using Mintra, in the backend they decode using that token, right, to figure out an ID for you, and that's your identity within the company. You just attached an ID, and in every request that ID is being passed, the front end is passing that ID, and then you understand, okay, this request is coming from this user, and you behave, the application behaves accordingly, right? Something very similar is something very similar way, right, is how it has been solved for coding agents, right? How the problem of stateless models is solved by agents, and the simple answer is by introducing a conversation ID. Now if I go one more layer deeper, right, so let's say you prompted the model saying hi, right, it will respond you back, and your first response creates a conversation ID, and everything that you types next, right, becomes a list of messages. And whenever the next request for the model is fed, right, it the harness basically, or let's say Cloud Code or GitHub CLI application, what it will do, right, that it will have the system prompt and tools, right, and then it will basically stitch together all the conversation that it has had again. So all of this is stitched together in a conversation ID. And even though the model is stateless, right, the state is maintained by the application in the form of this conversation ID. It stores this history someplace, and whenever it is trying to talk to the model again, right, it fetches fetches all the conversation or all the messages that have been exchanged, right? And that's how it solves. These are the two problems, or uh, two major features that are enabled by the harness layer, or the we talked about two layers, right? So this is enabled by the second layer, and again, reasoning capability is part of the model itself. So yeah, that's how it goes. Let's say vague task, and model has these tools to be able to open a file, right? Model has these tools, meaning harness has exposed these tools to the model. So model, whenever you ask it, like let's say to edit any file, it uses that, get that, reads that file, reasons over it, and then decides that uh, what it should do next. And again, that capability, reasoning capability and text interpretation or text output, models are very good at. And everything else, right, is again being enabled by the harness. Two major things are: first is the set of tools that are available, and based on those set of tools, that determines the capabilities of the uh, basically application, right? And second one is stitching together all the conversation that you have and combining these two together. That's how they work. So I think this gives you an understanding of basics of the these applications, right?